Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of Conversations with to the franchise community. What that means is we've run through a whole bunch of conversations, and really in season 1, it was about how are we navigating everything that's happened in COVID. Now, as we turn into the next level of our conversations, now we're turning into very specifics about brands, about brokers, about franchisees, to try to give you guidance on what that world looks like. I want to bring in Charles and Eric Little from Right at Home. Eric, thank you for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. So Eric, I would love for you to frame the business. And the question that I like is why you, why now? That somewhere in your answer, that probably has changed slightly or amplified slightly over the last few months. But maybe do a framing of what is Right at Home, why you, why now, as we kick this off.
Yeah, awesome. Good to see you both. Right at Home is a senior care concept. It's been around for a long time, since 1995. And so, our mission has always been to improve the quality of life for those we serve. And what we're doing is we're going into the homes and we're doing basically what a family member would do if they lived really close by, right? Next door even. So we help cooking, we help with cleaning, we help with running errands, anything that you can think of that would be like an activity of daily living that we probably all took for granted this morning, right? We all got up and I don't know, maybe with some people in the Zoom world, they didn't shower. I did. But the idea is that we're helping seniors and other people with disabilities to live the most normal life that they can with as much dignity and independence as is possible for their specific circumstances. So that's sort of the frame of the business. One of the things that really we've talked a lot about this on the executive team here lately is this question has come up about, well, how have you evolved the business and what's changed? And certainly, we're all living in a different world now. We all watch a lot of webinars and hear a lot of people talking about what has changed and how the people are seeing the world through different lenses. What's interesting about our business is the rest of the world who isn't involved in some kind of senior care is getting a little glimpse of what it's like to be a senior. All this stuff with isolation that you're talking about, those were our clients before COVID. Forget COVID for a second. We already had clients who had trouble getting out and getting into the community. We already had clients who were trying to figure out how to socialize. And so a lot of what we're doing is it's the same because it's what we've always done. There really hasn't had to be, other than the obvious PPE and making sure masks and gloves and processes and procedures are followed. A lot of what we're doing is what we've always done with regard to the client side.
Eric, with the I go through this myself with an elderly mother and stuff, so I never understood really the profound impact that your industry has and why, as an industry it exists. Just diving a little deeper, right? As franchisees onboard, as people evaluate Right at Home, if I'm looking within the segment, right, the home care industry, what's your why you? Over other brands at this point.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it depends on who you ask the question to, right? So years ago, I went to one of the broker conventions out there. And there's a broker that I know really well, and he had over the years referred a lot of clients to us. And I just said, hey, why do you keep sending people to us? What is it about us that you like? And he gave like this very simple answer that I've told this story probably dozens of times since then. He said, Eric, you guys have a long history of taking people that don't know anything about home care and helping them to be successful members of the community. They're able to build these businesses that you leverage your training and your support and your experience to help them with the experience that they have, and they go create this great business together. So I think that's certainly one of the answers that I would have. Another big one, I think, is it's really easy to belong to Right at Home. What I mean by that is it's comfortable, right? We're you guys are in the Midwest too, and so we are. We talk about the fact that we're this nice Midwestern company with nice Midwestern people, but it's a really smart group of people too. And so we're able to have a culture, I think, that people just identify with. We had a discovery day years ago, and it was a guy who's still here today. Actually, he's from California. And at the end of discovery day, he looked at me and he said, Eric, and I don't want to offend anybody on the coast, but what he said might offend some people on the coast. He's like, Eric, if I want to entrust my livelihood to some group of people, I want it to be the group of people in the middle of the country. I always get a big kick out of that quote. Of course, he was being funny, but I think the culture here is really easy to belong to. We're very transparent. One of the things that we started doing right away in this COVID environment, just as a quick example, is we started having town hall meetings. Well, in the old Right at Home, which is the words we're using now, in the old Right at Home, we were, for us to do a town hall meeting with hundreds of franchisees, I mean, the preparation that went into that was unbelievable, right? There was all kinds of discussion. Oh, let's put this slide in. Oh, we got to change that bullet point. We're definitely going to talk about this. And it was all this preparation and time and effort that went into doing, maybe a quarterly town hall, something like that. Well, right away, we started doing weekly town halls, right? And literally, like right before we hit the button to turn the thing on, we're putting it together, and it worked. And so one of the things that came out of that was that people saw that our transparency, right? We started reporting as a system exactly what happened to our business, right? We started reporting, we track hours, right? So we look at the number of hours our franchisees are billing across the system. And so we just started reporting those across the system, and to the point where the last little part of the graph that goes up, it's an incomplete week. Whenever we get the data and just how the scheduling works out with the webinar every week, it's not, we don't have all the data from the previous week yet. So even that goes on the slide to say, okay, remember it's Wednesday, and we're not gonna have great numbers yet for another couple of days, but people can see exactly what's going on with the system, and they were curious to see that. So we start every one of the town halls that way now. So I think, getting back to your question, Charles, I think I think there's a few things. I think the long history counts, right? I think we've had a good long history of helping people be successful in the business. I think that the culture is one where it's just easy to belong to. And then the last one, I mean, we got the performance to back it up. I mean, we've had a really, really strong out of 19 for a long time. And I think that really gives people some comfort, because, one of the biggest fears, I've been in franchising a long time. One of the biggest fears I think people have is that they're going to lose all their money, right? They're going to make a bad decision, and they're going to get into a business that either isn't a good fit, or the franchisor is not going to help them to get to the point where they want to be. And so I think with those three things, we hit them out of the park.
I want to unpack something there, because to me, it's fascinating that the question continues to be asked, and this is to any franchise brand, of why you. And if we take a step back, and I'm going to oversimplify it with this statement, but it's, you're either famous for something, the cost or the price of whatever you're selling things, or you can show that you're innovative. Like on the front end, those are three things that could happen and help you decide whether a product makes sense for you. But what's fascinating is, you said, why does the brokers keep sending you people? You guys ... successful. And the you guys, and then you go to point two, which is culture, and then that you can back it up through performance. Like, the reality is, I think franchisors undervalue the depth and strength of that leadership team. And the more franchisees that we talk to about why they bought, they don't buy because they want to sell senior care necessarily, or they want to sell education, or they want to sell a burger. They look at this team of people and they're buying into a system, and they're not creating a brand. It's the believability that this team is going to help me protect my investment and help me scale my business and give me the pathway of what I want to get to. So it seems like we're all these brands hunt for the point of differentiation, and I'm sure there's points that you need to call out. Yeah. But above all, if a franchisor does not create a culture that displays vision, best of luck. Am I somewhat right on this track?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to it, right? So one of them certainly is just what you talked about. People are not going to buy into a franchise that they don't believe in the vision, because the thing is, they're going to be deputized to go out and tell that story, right? They're going to be deputized to go out with, they've got their franchise agreement, they've got their license to use the brand. They got to go out and tell the story. And if they don't believe in it, it's never going to work, right? It doesn't matter what industry it is. They've got to believe in the vision of the company and the leadership team that's there. And so, we track that. We survey the franchisees every year and ask them all kinds of things. It takes them probably 45 minutes to fill the survey out. But one of the things that we continually get rated highly on is the leadership team. And I think part of that is the longevity of the team. I've been here 12 years now. Brian, our CEO, has been here since we started franchising in 2001. Margaret, our COO, has probably been here 10 years now, I think it is. Jeff Favracek, that's our CFO, has also been here probably 11 years, I think is where he is. So we've got that longevity in team, and we all know each other. We know the relationships, and we know how to work together. And I think that the franchisees, and not even the franchisees after the fact, they see it, but as a prospective franchisee, you've got to buy into that. And that means that the entire process that you go through as a prospect, you have to see that it's reflected, the culture is reflected in the process. You have to pay attention to those things. You have to pay attention to, even in a virtual environment, how does the team interact on Discovery Day? And what they get from us, it really is a WYSIWYG situation. It's what you see is what you get. And so we laugh, and sometimes the technology doesn't work on the virtual thing and whatever, but we kind of just act the same way that we do. Discovery Day for us isn't, it's not an act, it's how we really are. And I think people see that. And I've even had, years ago, I even had a prospect who came up afterwards, and he's like, Eric, he's like, I signed and I came on board. He said, now that I've been here for 2 weeks, that was the training class was obviously not virtual at that point. And I was kind of wondering though, was it an act? And he said, I'm glad to say here that it's not. So I think that's part of the answer, Nick, but I think the other part of the answer here has to do with our prospects and their motivation, right? So for us, and this has been the case really since we've been franchising, we trademarked, as you probably know, we trademarked that phrase "success with significance" a long time ago. And we did that because it really succinctly describes who it is that we're looking for as a franchisee. So typically people come to us and they've gotten to a point in their corporate career, like with a lot of other franchises, where they just kind of feel like they've kind of topped out, right? They've done what they were going to do in the corporate world. Now the next logical step in their career path is to move on to something that they own, something that they have more autonomy, something they have more control over. But our franchisees, the people that actually come on board, not any business will do. They want their business to matter, right? And it doesn't mean that the ice cream franchises and the lawn care franchises and the painting franchise, it doesn't mean that those are bad. It just for the people that we actually bring on board as franchisees, they want to make a difference. And sometimes they do come in saying they want to take care of older people because that's something that they're comfortable with. A lot of times it's just they come to us thinking that, look, my time on the planet here is limited. I've done these things in my corporate life. Now I'd like to do something that really leaves a positive impact on our community. And then on top of that, we've had franchisees who now we've had so many of them pass the businesses on to their kids that we now actually have specific training for the legacy kids who grew up in the business and worked in it, summers or whatever, and then eventually took it over.
Eric, if I took a lesson out of this, one of the comments you made that's compelling for me is your focus on, or at least the prospective franchisees focus on, a team that'll help protect their investment, right? Yeah. Because sometimes I think we lose sight, especially as a lawyer. We have item 19s all day, but sometimes I think even in the franchise sales and development process, people forget, why are we disclosing this information? Why are we talking about it? One is short, future potential, but also having that confidence that they're going to be protected or at least have better odds. I think that's a compelling viewpoint in franchise development as you're engaging. And I get you can't fake it, but it's interesting to me that must be a very big intangible for a franchisee, which is, are these the type of people that are going to protect me and protect my money?
Yeah, I think it's a huge comfort to them. They see, it goes back to what we talked about at the top of the call. They see the culture, but then they see it backed up with the performance in the item 19, the FDD. And then on top of that, it validates, right? We had through this COVID thing, just to give you a little bit of insight into the culture, through this COVID thing, there were a few weeks there where we just kind of said, you know what, we had somebody ready to sign, actually. We had somebody who was ready to sign a franchise agreement with us. And we just stopped and we said, we don't know what's going to happen yet. Let's hold off. Let's just wait and see what happens. And, and so I actually got involved with him. I hadn't been working with him personally a lot, but I got involved with him and really was just keeping him updated on what the what the process was, or what the impact was going to be, and what our process was going to be going forward. And to the point where he was, he's like, look, I'm ready, Eric. Whenever you guys are ready, let's go. And we waited a few weeks to do that. I think that those kinds of things, Charles, are things that, we don't do them because they look good. We just do them because we felt that was the right thing to do. And eventually we did. We waited about a month. And then we finally did bring him on board. And since that time, we've had 8 transactions that have happened since March 1st, I think it is. So, we've put together a process that helps people feel comfortable that we're just not out there selling franchises. I did a 2-hour phone call with this particular individual to say, hey, you know what? It's March. Actually, I think it was probably April 1st-ish at that point, somewhere in that time frame. And I said, here, I had a list this long of stuff. I shared my screen with him. And I said, here are all the things I think could go wrong. And the reason that we do that is because we want people to go into this with their eyes wide open. And I think people can see that, to your point. I think people can pick up on that. We had just to give you another example, years ago, we had a partnership come in, and they came to Discovery Day. Everything was great. Their money comes in after Discovery Day. They signed the franchise agreement. And you'll appreciate this, Charles, as a lawyer. One of the 2 partners filled out the questionnaire incorrectly. So for those of you watching that don't know what this is, most franchisors will have a questionnaire attached to their franchise agreement just to make sure that they followed all the rules and made sure that they did everything appropriately through the sales process. And so we have that, like a lot of franchisors. Well, one of them checked the wrong answer on the questionnaire. We couldn't get the guy back on the phone. He kind of just vanished, to the point where the partner was like, I don't know where he is. And so we held on to, we had the check back in the days when people sent checks. We had the check. We had the 2 franchise agreements. Couldn't get the guy back on the phone. And ultimately we said, look, we can't cash the check. We can't sign this. So we sent everything back. We sent $80,000 back to the 2 people that sent the checks, and it was 2 separate checks. And eventually, finally a month, 6 weeks went by, whatever it was, partnership dissolved. That franchisee ended up coming on board by himself without the partner. He didn't need the partner anyway. And, it's all a happy ending. He's a President Circle level franchisee now. And he tells that story every once in a while too. It reminds me about it as well. But again, for us, that was the right thing to do. And it makes, I think those kind of things are the things that ultimately make people feel comfortable as well.
Eric, as we take the final turn, the last question that I want to ask is around the challenge. And I believe the biggest challenge that you face, and this is for franchise brokers or for franchise buyers, is you just painted the picture of the ideal franchise brand, and now territory is limited. So for me as a buyer, I could listen to this and say, I really want to be a part of your family. And you're like, I'm sorry. Is that one of the toughest parts about doing franchising right? Is that it changes what development is and what you can do to bring new folks into the system?
Well, I think, I do think it changes over time, right? I've had my experience with startups in the past, and those are fun, but it's, like you said, it's all green pasture at that point. Now at Right at Home, and we still do have over 300 territories available, so we still have quite a few territories available, but a lot of the top MSAs are gone, right? We already have a presence in 80, I think it's 88 of the top 100 MSAs. So we are in most of the major markets, but we still have a lot of those other markets that are available where there's only going to be one, right? We've got Atlanta is pretty well sold out right now, but we've got other markets in Georgia that are single territory markets that are available. And so it definitely does change things for not only how it changes from a staffing perspective, it changes it from a leadership perspective, it changes it from a process perspective. But here's part of the key to it. You're not, even when you get to a point where you're a mature brand, I don't believe you're done, right? You still need to continue to bring in new franchisees with new energy. Sometimes, though, those new franchisees buy existing units. We've had over 100 resales since 2010. And so in some ways, we've become really good at resales, right? We've become good at building processes that allow us to process these resale transactions. But the other big change, I think, is we have to figure out, you and I have talked about this, Nick, we have to figure out how to find these folks in these markets where we still have available. We have a lot of good markets still available, but again, most of them are not in the major metro areas, or if they are, they're in the sort of the remote areas of town. You look at Dallas, Fort Worth as an example. What we have left is on the periphery of those of those big markets typically.
Well, before I let you go, I want to make a point here, and I feel like we could talk about this for hours. So I'll accept a quick comment on this. But it's almost like in our industry, unfortunately, resales have been painted as almost like okay, like it's not celebrated. But the reality is you're talking about the handoff of business ownership. So it's validating the whole point of franchising. It's continuation of fresh and innovative ideas that are coming in from new blood that comes in. But it's almost like that might be a big shakeup that has to happen at some point to actually call like a resales is equal or if not better than initial franchisee because it has so much great possibility attached to it.
I think any business has the potential to either burn somebody out or at least, people I think sometimes lose a little energy over time. One of the things I've counseled franchisees to do in my time in franchising was make sure that you sell it before you have to, right? Don't try to sell a business after you've already fell out of love with it. And I think that that's still good advice that holds true today. Make sure that you sell it before you have to sell it. In other words, don't get yourself in a position where you just can't build it back up, right? But I look at the franchisees we have and the leadership councils and all the things there's all kinds of ways that franchisees can get involved with us, not just at the unit level. They can get on the committees and subcommittees and leadership opportunities, those kind of things. Some of those franchisees bought resales and they brought terrific new energy into the business. They brought great perspective into the business. And so I agree 100%. I think that the resales don't get celebrated enough. And I'm guilty of it. I once had one of my franchise directors say, boy, Eric, I did these several resale transactions. I'm not feeling like it, it's being recognized appropriately. And he was right. We need to make sure that we recognize and reward those appropriately because they do bring in great new talent. And for us, does it really, we want to grow, right? We have growth goals and we want to have net unit growth. But in my opinion, part of the responsibility and part of the value of a solid franchise system is helping the franchisees that have built equity in those businesses to get that equity out when it's time to sell.
Love it. Eric Little, we appreciate the time. A little over 20 minutes, but we almost did it. Thank you for everybody watching at home. We will put more information on Right at Home all over this video. But thanks for watching. Eric, thanks for the time.
Charles, Nick, thank you.
Thank you.